All right, everyone, welcome back to the SpearFactor Spearfishing Podcast. Today's guest is none other than Shrek, Isaac, Daly. You just go ahead.
I was just going to say, welcome to SpearFactor, the greatest spearfishing podcast on the planet.
The number 2 greatest.
No, don't be like that, man. I think Noob Spearo's been going 10 years. How long's the SpearFactor been going now? It's like 4, maybe?
Maybe, yeah, I think it's 4 or 5. This might be the 5th year coming up.
Oh, it's well done, man.
Thank you. I couldn't have done it without you, man, to be honest.
It's been cool. When you launched your Patreon, I think I was one of the first people in there with Captain Dan. And it's awesome to support you, man. You've had some cool people on, some good yarns, and you've stuck to it too, which is something a lot of people start and fall away. So cool.
Thanks. Yeah, it's interesting, man. It's I always look at what you're doing, and I respect it more and more because it is really truly a labor of love. It's tough. And because you're like, what is the point? And really the point of it, I go back to which really originally started everything, was just trying to put out some things to help people. And I always thought, like, because I talked about this with our friend John, where your perspective is, my understanding was you were newer and you started it. So you were doing it from like a host with little experiences, not much, a few years or whatever, and helping yourself as well as helping other people with guests. So your perspective was different. And then I thought it'd be kind of cool. And I've been diving for a while, and I was like, to do it with my guest, only have a little bit more experience behind me so I can ask maybe different questions or something, or just take a different approach. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting. And then I am happy to say that, I mean, you're like the godfather of it. I mean, to be honest, you had been doing, you said 10 years, right? So it's like and then there has been others that have jumped in, and I actually thought, cool, we could pass the torch, and because we're not making any money at all off of it. I'm actually losing a lot based on my taxes, but I think
based on my taxes,
and I think it's cool to be able to, like, hey, someone, maybe we inspired or help, someone do something and they think they could do it differently or a different approach. Cool. And I thought, like, oh, these guys are going to jump in and take over, and then maybe that's a good way to fade out and just, like, But then what I've seen is a lot of people come and then they start a good product, I think, and then they just kind of fall off or something. I don't know.
I think you have to have a bit of purpose behind it, Brett, like you do. Like, you've definitely wanted to help people. If you're in it for self-interest, then you definitely fall out pretty quick, I reckon. But like, I saw a lot of opportunity. Like, part of the values that I always try to put out there is less ego, because sometimes I look at the spirit community and a lot of, type A personalities, and sometimes there's a bit too much chest beating and not a lot of substance behind things. And I just and I thought, well, there's not much room to be a learner in that space. Like, you can't come into that scene and, be a learner and feel comfortable. Straight away, you're going to feel anxious being surrounded by egotistical people. Like, one of the coolest things about doing jiu-jitsu, and I think you've done a fair bit as well, is like, the culture there is so supportive. Like, you walk in on your first day and you're a rank amateur, terrible, and people just couldn't be friendlier, couldn't be nicer. They're all savages when you get on a mat with them or whatever, have your free rolls. But even then, they're quite graceful with you, as long as you're not trying to muscle them straight up and they can see you trying to learn. And I like that. And then I looked at spearfishing and I was like, we didn't have any of that. We just,
no.
Someone throws you a gun, jump in the water, and it's single swim, baby. Like, oh, there's a fish, go and shoot it. And it's like, well, what about equalizing? How do I learn about equipment? Where can I go? How can I find dive buddies? What about all this freediving technique? How do I look after my mates? All these basic things, no one really formally shows you unless you've got money and pay for a course. And so I thought, well, I can learn how to become a better Spearo myself, because like you said, when I started the podcast, it's probably like 2 or 3 years into it, maybe a little bit more, but definitely pretty fresh, man. Never owned a boat, never been, I've still never really been proper blue water hunting even now. And I still consider myself a noob. Like I teach, I'm an instructor now. I can rattle off all my figures if you want. I don't think they matter, but like I love teaching people, but I still don't consider myself some grandmaster. I'm just like, I just love spearfishing. I love people who've been doing it a little while. And yeah, so it's all kind of this synergistic thing, which is cool because, there's a financial sort of side of it that it's definitely not something that where you're going to retire from your day job quickly. Like I said, I've been doing it 10 years, but I love spear and I love people. And I actually love podcasting too, to be honest. So there is this synergy there for me, like I said.
I think you're right. With the podcasting thing, it's funny. It seems like a task trying to organize and get everybody linked up. And then every time I do a podcast, it's like meeting a new best friend. I just feel like after you get off the thing, it's like, oh man, it's like having the best conversation. You get away and you're like, oh, I've restored my faith in humanity. Like these guys there's a lot of good people out there.
100%. Yeah. It demystifies people. And then there's a whole lot of benefits to podcasting that are non-financial. You meet people, you make connections. I get invites all over the world to go and dive all sorts of stuff. Unfortunately, I've got 4 boys and a full-time job plus Noob Spearo, so my time and opportunity to go away and make the most of some of these opportunities is not there. But like, man, if you were like a late teenager, early 20s, and like, it'd be a really cool project to start if you were like, all right, I'm going to go travel the world spearfishing. By the time you went to do it in your mid-20s, you'd actually have a network to do it. I've definitely got that now, and it's been cool. Like one other thing I really loved about it is introducing the world to people. Introducing the world of spearfishing to different people and different products. Like a lot of the stuff in spearfishing, the companies, they're pretty small, man. Like even when you hear about the massive brands like Rob Allen and Rife, you look at the factories and the people behind it, they're just regular people. And so when you introduce, the spearfishing world to those people, you're helping them grow. And like they're just regular people trying to do stuff that they love, which is, make cool stuff for Spearos.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just how for the younger guys, I feel like it's a cycle, right? Like you want all this stuff, then when you get it, you don't have the money or the time to use it, And for me, what's happening is now that I've been doing this, and like you said, it's the same thing. I got friends all over the place or invites everywhere, and my son just went to college. My daughter's driving now, and it was like that all happened in a week, and all of a sudden, it was like my wife and I finally had more time, like a lot more time to then kind of engage in dating again, our relationship, and like, but it's slowly, little by little, trickling back into actually having time where you don't feel, and money, although I don't know, college is expensive too, but a little bit of money, just more time to be able to do these things. So
yeah, that's cool.
There's just so many cool people out there, and different styles of diving and different like fish, and the way, like what the guys in Australia and like Rob Allen in South Africa, like the way the fish they're shooting with the guns they have and the diameter shafts and Chris Coates, and their philosophy is totally opposite than us Californians, which we've talked about before with our giant wooden guns and all that. But it's just cool to see how many different ways to skin a cat, so to speak. Like, and again, just how cool the spearfishing world in the world is out there with all the different places to hunt.
It's an easy conversation to have too, I think, because everyone shares that just froth for the spear in life, and how they do it, like it's an easy way to start a conversation with someone because you already share this love for something.
Right. I do love it as much as I got to try to schedule this, and I feel like you could, if you could link everybody up, if you could make a list out of every, like, because I get it oftentimes, hey, you got to have this person on your show. You can make a list of 1,000 people that are so unique and so cool. And it's just with me personally, now that I was coaching football, now that's over. It's like, now I have more time, but trying to link up. Oh, how much time do you have in the week? Oh, I have 2 hours at this time, where my wife's not going to be like, so let me get this straight. You're at work all day. You're doing this, you're diving. Then you want to schedule what's left for us, so it's got to play that balance. And rightfully, yeah. With you, so you're from New Zealand. You grew up in New Zealand. Can you just give us a little bit of background about how you kind of turned into Shrek? Like, you went from being the young boy Shrek to the diver Shrek to the whatever, scuba diver Shrek to spearfishing Shrek. Yeah.
So New Zealand's like, New Zealand's a really cool place. Like it's everything you see on the TV commercials, like very outdoor lifestyle driven. One time I took a girlfriend there and she was like, like it's like she said, it's like one big farm, like, like it's just so rural, and I grew up in a part of New Zealand called Taranaki. It's on the west coast. So I have that in common with you Californians, like, and it's rugged sort of black sand, and water's dirty a lot. So I grew up sort of boogie boarding, surfing. Sorry, is that bodyboarding? Do you call it boogie boarding over there?
I still call it boogie boarding because I was like, started doing it like 3, so it's yeah,
nose guards and all the other awesome things we get called. Like I did competitive swimming, pool life saving, surf life saving, and I just love the water. Absolute water baby. Grew up though, didn't do that well at school. In fact, I did terribly, really. Crushed my confidence really as a young man. New Zealand school system was not good for young men when I was growing up, that's for sure. And then I think I was about 17, unemployed, sitting around home, sleeping in, and mum and dad gave me an ultimatum, like, you're going to have a job or you're going to be on a course by the end of next week. Otherwise, you're out on your ass pretty much. And I found this adventure tourism course, and part of the course was about, serving that whole industry in New Zealand, but part of it was you got to do, I think we went through to rescue diver level and the SSI, which was scuba diving. And I absolutely loved it. Like, it was just so cool. Even on that course, we were like chasing lobster in 20 meters of 60, 70 feet of water, which was just so cool. It sort of got me right into the underwater world, and started snorkeling and mucking around, shooting butterfish in New Zealand even then. And then I ended up falling in love with that idea. And the guy who taught me to scuba dive, he loved it that much. He was a dairy farmer, like he owned acreage. He was, and he loved it that much that he built a dive well on his farm, like a 5 meter, 15 feet deep dive well on his farm. This guy absolutely frothed on scuba diving and catching lobster pretty much, or crayfish as we call them in New Zealand. But anyway, he instilled this passion in me, and I absolutely loved it. And then, but he only taught through, I think we went through to dive control specialist under SSI, and then I found another dive school on the other side of the country, further north, and it was PADI though, but I switched over and did a master scuba diver instructor course with him. But that guy was at the opposite end of his career. He was dry and lifeless. Like, he absolutely hated people. And he did everything he could to destroy my passion for teaching and my love for scuba diving. I came out of that a little bit deflated, and then ended up just falling back into sort of the blue-collar work, working in a meatworks and things like that, playing in sort of garage bands with a mate. And actually, a few of us decided, let's travel the world together, get out of Taranaki, because it was just a small rural place in New Zealand. And so I fell away from the water for a while, but me and the drummer immigrated to Brisbane, and we were going to launch our world travels from here. And we neither of us made it further than Brisbane for many years, which is funny. But we started another sort of band, and I think probably 5 years later, I sort of muscled up probably enough money to buy an entry-level kit, and met another mate, and he was equally keen but equally green, and so we commenced blind leading the blind attempts at spearfishing, and like I remember jumping in at places where you're not even allowed to go, with no idea really about species ID, because I didn't grow up in Australia, so the species were kind of all new to me. And they just and off southeast Queensland where I live in Brisbane here, it's the array of species is like amazing. Like we're in that sweet spot where, sort of we get the northern range of the temperate water species. We're in the subtropics, but we get proper tropic species here as well. And so the sheer like volume, the total number of species you could take off Brisbane on any given day it'd be north of 500 species, I'd imagine. Like if you all said and done, if you really wanted to do it, probably commonly you could shoot 150 something. So like, that acquisition of all those species is pretty tricky. Mike, who I started spearing with, he used to get seasick, like even in enclosed water. He would be vomiting into a snorkel and swimming back in after an hour, and I'd carry on by myself. But like I said, it was blind leading the blind. Did not have the best gear, did not have the budget for it, definitely did not have a boat, and owning a boat in this part of the world is kind of essential, because the shore-based spearfishing is pretty garbage, to be honest. There are times of the year where it's great, and I love rock hopping. We call it rock hopping here. Yeah, that's kind of the brief. Cliff notes, I reckon, Brett.
Yeah, that's an excellent story. Going all the way back in, because I have kind of similar situation with the school. What was it about the school that just killed your confidence? Did you have like a learning disability, or was it just you just struggled, or?
Nah, funnily enough, when I re-entered education years later at university, I absolutely thrived. I found no troubles learning at all. I am a little bit of a self-directed, autonomous type person, like a little bit entrepreneurial, which probably doesn't gel well with a formal learning environment. But New Zealand school system, in my parents' generation, was very male-oriented, competitive environment, and sort of performance-oriented. The pendulum in New Zealand swung too far the other way, and they tried to create this really inclusive sort of, I don't know, a different mode of learning, really, to cater for everyone, so no one gets left behind. But I think mostly the blokes get left behind in that mode of the way they did school then. And we were just in public schools. I did have a year in a private school, but just never gelled. Wasn't very socially intelligent, I don't think, and also just the I don't know. I think being a critical thinker when you're 15 or 16, it's not really allowed. You're not really allowed to ask any questions. I think I didn't get the best run of teachers either, if I'm honest. And I came out of New Zealand. I think most people, they don't really realize it, but we almost get indoctrinated into this socialist sort of view of the world. And it wasn't until years later where I really started to read a lot, and that I really started challenging some of the ideas that I just caught during secondary school. I don't think that was the best worldview to come into adulthood with. So I had to reshape a lot of those ideas and stuff like that. So yeah, it's funny because traveling, I talked to American school teachers when I was walking across Spain, and they were talking about how New Zealand's this model of the best education in the world, and I was like, well, not where I grew up. But maybe it was just my own personal experience too. So,
Wow, it's interesting. Talking to Ollie Craig too, a little bit offline about New Zealand and some of that stuff too. It's like, somewhere's in the middle, right? But there's this knee jerk reaction, and it's like right and left. It's process based versus product based, And we did the same thing, no child left behind. And from what I've seen as a parent is we just lower the bar so low and say, yeah, you're good to go. But we're not actually like raising anybody up. We just lower the bar down, and then we get put in the regular world, and they're, the kids are just behind compared to other places. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yep.
That's a whole nother show, I guess. But
Yeah. That's our other podcast, Brett, the political one.
yeah, we'll get into that. Oh, geez. And so that's interesting though that the species, I would say the same thing that I've ever heard about with the crazy thing about that region of the world, which you're in Australia, like you get those currents, but you get such a variety of fish. And then you go just a little bit north or a little bit south, not that far, and relatively speaking, the US, it's like it just changes dramatically the coast, the water.
Yeah.
Because it's like I remember it was like joking around about it, like it in Australia, especially where you're at, it's like you can get attacked by a tiger shark or a great white, like either way, like
Yeah.
pick your poison.
Mako recently. Mako's been.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's bad news. Did someone recently get attacked by a mako there?
No, not attacked. Just like, but when a Mako buzzes, yeah, like I haven't actually experienced it personally, but I've had a few people around me talk about it, and it's just I've been line fishing when we've had like a 4-meter one, just go berserk. But that was actually in New Zealand. But like they're just such a crazy shark, unpredictable, fast. They just, yeah.
It's like it reminds me of like a Belgian Malinois versus a German Shepherd. Like they're just an amped up version of a great white.
Yeah.
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 Like, yeah. Super cool fish though. So what was it for you? Like you did your scuba diving, you got into with your buddy, you're just kind of blind leading the blind, which I think is really the case for so many of us, including myself. Where that learning curve is like you're just slowly learning one thing at a time, and then the internet was discovered, and then I got on the internet. I say it was discovered by me, like 10 years later after it was developed, and I was like, wow, there's so much information on here. And the learning curve is a little steeper, but what was it for you that was the kind of like how did Noob Spearo come about? Like, what was it that was like, I want to do this?
Yeah, cool. I was working in this plasterboard factory, funnily enough, making I sort of oversaw the takeoff area. So all the board would come out of like a kiln, and I had to operate all this machinery. Most of it was automated, but then when it sort of went to shit, like you'd have to be really onto it. But honestly, for sometimes 11 out of 12 hours of the shift, I would just be sitting there on my butt doing nothing. So I started listening to podcasts, and this podcast run by a former U.S. military member was Entrepreneur on Fire. And this guy did, John Lee Dumas was his name. He would interview 7 entrepreneurs, one every day. And I started listening to that, and I was just intrigued, like kind of opened my eyes up to the possibilities of what you could do. Basically, the core idea that I got from him was like, find a tribe of people that need stuff, Doesn't matter if you're a learner or you're a master, you can serve these people wherever you're at in your journey, and find this tribe of people, and then just create cool stuff for them. And then you build a community around providing value, and then you can build a business out of it. Anyway, so I thought, well, that sounds cool, and I'm loving this podcast vibe. I love spearfishing, so here we go. And I could see a lot of like problems. I struggle with a lot of them myself, and so I thought, well, here's a good way to sort of extend out and meet a whole bunch of cool people that teach us all how to become better at spearfishing, and then away it went. And at the same time, I joined some pool training run here in Brisbane by a guy called Wayne Judge. It's now called the Brisbane Bull Sharks, but it was, even before it was a proper club. Wayne had this 8-week sort of pool training regime, I guess, where he would whip us all into decent shape for spearfishing, and built into it was safety, but you sort of work your way through fitness, and then into CO2 tolerance, and then O2 tolerance, and at the back end of it, you can sometimes do some max swims and stuff in a supervised environment, and all the way through, you kind of refine your technique. While we were doing that, I met Turbo and a whole bunch of other blokes that I used to go spearfishing with. We call it the POS crew. We're all pieces of shit. But we had a lot of fun. And, Turbo had this thing about it, and we just had some pretty good good laughs. And so I actually called a business meeting with him in our local McDonald's. And I pitched to him the idea of Noob Spearo, and so he jumped on with me. And so for the first 100 episodes of the Noob Spearo, I had a co-host, which was Turbo. Unfortunately, life situations changed, and so he moved on, but I've carried on. I think, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of that, and that's kind of how that all took shape, I guess. And Noob Spearo continued to evolve from that. We wrote our first book together based on the first 50 interviews we did, and then still doing books and stuff now. Like, we recently crowdsourced the 99 Spare Recipes. I think you got a couple of copies. Do you have a couple of copies there, Brett?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that's kind of the brief story, man.
Yeah, it's funny hearing that your whole story, just that little brief bit, was like, okay, that's check. Like, I was working on a book. Same thing. Like, it's just like, yeah, I wonder why that is. Like, it's like, I got all this information in audio form. Why don't I just put it into a, with all the information I got from a lot of our guests, my own experience, but like, what a great idea just to kind of put a bunch of notes down or a bunch of whatever for people that are learning, a beginner's guide to something. And I did, I think I was telling you, I don't know if you said, I did a beginner's guide post for here in San Diego, just locally. And
nice.
That thing had like, I think it was like 12 pages long, but that thing had like, I don't know, thousands, like 10,000, 15,000, maybe 16,000 views.
Nice.
And I was like, man, that's really helpful. Well, why don't I just make a book like that? Just a, steroided out version of that. And yeah. And I always remember looking at what you did and just thinking, okay, I'm 5 years behind. Yeah, because no, and I mean in a good way. Like, okay, I'm starting out here. Okay, what would the guys do? Because at the time Turbo was still there, and just looking to you as the example of what is possible with this. And so, like, for me, it's an honor. I mean, you are always so helpful, and it's really an honor to just say thank you, and an honor to be able to know you and see you lead the way for all of us. Because I do think that there is a genuineness about you as well, and just trying to do it for the right reasons. And it was just such a great role model, to the point where I've even said, well, why am I even doing this? Like, at some point I got other shit to do. Shrek's got it. He's crushing it. Like, why?
Yeah. I never view it like that, like, and when you and John come along, like Cast and Spear, and we got SpearFactor, I always just view it as like, because sometimes spearing is very like geocentric too, like you've got tribes, and they're kind of locked into areas, like, I'm not going to serve California as well as you are, definitely. I'm not going to serve the whole continental US as well as you are, because just the reality of it is that, like, a lot of Australians don't want to listen to an American accent. A lot of Americans don't want to listen to whatever my accent is these days, but also, like, you think differently about things. And like you said, like, you come into it with more experience than I did. And you were well-traveled. You'd done a lot of blue water stuff. And that experience does come through in some of the questions you ask, and sometimes with your guest selection. So I always I view it as a rising tide, man. Like, I always sort of see everyone as serving different parts of our community. And I think together it's a rising tide, That's kind of the way I look.
No, I appreciate that. And I do agree with you. It's what I learned was from listening to your shows and different guests is, to be totally honest, it seemed like our culture here in Southern California can improve greatly on the way we do things sometimes. You look at Australia, I guess, because maybe Australia is just such a massive landmass, but 90% of the population lives on the coast. There's not like this, and maybe it is, I don't know enough, but it seems like there's a lot less competition of resources and ego, like competition for spots and things like that, than there is here locally. Even in Cal, I mean, I know Florida's the same way, so it just seems a little different than in other places of the world. And it's cool to be like, hey, I like that. I'm going to take a little bit of that and put that
Yeah.
here and try to get that, water that seed. Hopefully that will grow into something. And then even just south of the border here in Mexico, it's like a big party, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody's diving. Nobody cares about I mean, yeah, we got fish. Let's just make some fish tacos and drink some beer, and you know. Whereas it's definitely more of a definitely culture swing from one place to another, and I think other places might do it a little bit better than we do. But it's funny though, because you meet everybody individually, and everybody's great. And I just think we all fall victim to this, what we're supposed to be like. Like, I remember what people think in the Midwest here in the middle of the United States, what they think of what a Californian is. And then us as Californians try to live up to that because they think it's like, that's where we're supposed to be like. No, you know, but you know, whatever. There's some truth to that too, though.
There's a lot. I think one thing is, like, when you do interview people from all over, there is stuff that we can borrow from everywhere. There's definitely a strong spearing culture where you are, you know, and you guys have got such remarkable conditions yourselves. Like, I always look at the kelp forests in different parts, and I like it. I've seen some wicked soundtracks with the way the light cascades through a kelp forest. That's part of the world that I want to spend time in. You know, like, all you just see, it's just it's an amazing thing. White sea bass, like, you know, like the Channel Islands, even your yellowtail and the way you guys hunt them is different. Like, I would love to come over there and experience it. I think one thing with the spearfishing podcast and YouTube channels as well is, like, you can kind of see what they're doing, and then you get this vicarious sense of, like, oh, I really want to experience that for myself, you know. And we've probably opened up the world of spearing tourism a wee bit.
Yeah, that's great because, I mean, it helps people out money-wise. And also, I kind of look at it too, the more people get a glimpse at the environment, the more they're going to care about it. And they don't even necessarily have to get in the water. Like, they can just experience it through our lens and maybe go, wow, I didn't even know about that. That's possible. That's cool. So, you know, that will help, hopefully, in a good way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think so. I think one thing too, though, is like you were saying before about, like, in populated areas, there's a lot more sort of perception of scarcity of resources, and maybe competition doesn't bring out the best in us. I think everywhere where you've got a big population, any sort of city over a couple of million people, inadvertently, when the spearing population grows and the recreational fishing grows and there's still commercial fishery, we end up putting pressure on our local fishery, everything within 100 kilometers. And then like 60 miles, you know, and then we have to really, you know, tighten up bag limits, but also our local senses of ethics with regards to size limits and species that are vulnerable to spearfishing. We have to kind of be onto that. And, you know, we don't want to allow fisheries to determine our ethics for us, I think, a lot of the time, because, you know, they're just so non-responsive. They're not, and then it's often a knee-jerk rather than, you know, and I wanted to chat with you a little bit about it. Like, I think in California, and I'd love to hear more about it, but, you know, your sheephead, they're vulnerable to spearfishing. Over here, we have black spot tuskfish in the southeast, and the minimum size limit is pathetic. You know, if they get one breeding cycle at minimum size, I would kind of be surprised, I think, because most minimum size limits, like, allow the species to have one theoretical breeding cycle before we remove them. These fish are remarkably slow growing, and they're quite dumb, and they're very curious. So they swim up to us, and, you know, it's cool. They're like, when they're a big animal, it's amazing, you know. But when they're sort of a moderately big animal or minimum size, they, like, as you get more experience, you kind of just like, well, I'm not going to shoot that, you know. And I think you guys maybe have the same situation there, and I think that is a role that older spearos can play in influencing the newer guys. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're 100% accurate there. It sounds very similar, like you said, the California sheep's head. I think it's almost like a maturity thing. And as you grow in diving and stuff or experience, it's almost like you've been there, done that. what would be the point of shooting this massive sheep's head that is, you saw them. Like I've had this dilemma so much because even just recently there was a big triggerfish and probably was a world record, and I have it on footage. You can't really tell, but it was massive. And I've always wanted a world record. I think that would be the coolest thing, for my kids and stuff. But I looked at him, he was by himself. It sounds super kind of funny, but you're diving and he comes, swims right up to you, and you're like, "What's up, big guy? You've probably been on this reef for a long time." And I was diving in the kind of area, and he's probably just coming up. He doesn't even know what I am, So,
Yeah.
as a friend of mine said, there I was the third diver he's seen there in 40 years. So it's like, do I shoot you in the face?
Yeah.
It's just, it didn't sit well. And you could see in the footage, I got my gun pointed right at him, and I'm sitting there just running through all this scenario in my head. Why, for a world record? It'd be cool, but that's not really why I do this.
Yeah.
And the same goes with like a big sheep's head, I think, or just bigger sheep's head. The thing with the sheep's head, and it's like most fish is why is always, I think we collectively always try to stress like, hey, know what role that fish plays in the environment before I pull the trigger. And each fish, different stages in their lives play a different role. Like bigger sheep's head eat urchins. They don't really switch over to urchins until they get a little bigger. So, and then we complain about the kelp forest being taken out by the urchins, but then we're smoking all the big sheep's head. So, so there's that. And again, I'm not blaming anybody. But for us, like our ethos or our, I don't know, value system or whatever it is, it does vary. Mine's not dictated by the laws. I'll say that. Mine's definitely dictated to what I personally feel and justify and rationalize. A lot of people can rationalize stuff, but that's just me. So someone might say, yeah, Brett, you shot 2 broomtail grouper and they take, 15 years to grow that size. But then you don't turn around and shoot a sheep's head or a big sheep's head. I might take a sheep's head here and there, probably once or twice a year. But really, so there's like that. How do you rationalize that? And I go, well, I rationalize that based on this data. That's where I'm at. But the point is that we're thinking about it. And I think just thinking about it is probably, and being cognizant of it is more appropriately, like more effective than somebody passed this blanket rule, that hasn't hardly spent any time in the water.
And it doesn't educate people either on why they've made that decision either. Like,
right.
I almost feel like a lot of the fisheries management, every single area could do with having their own podcast in order to discuss and disseminate the information around why they've made particular decisions and why they are doing the certain things that they are doing. And they can talk about why they didn't use different management practices for different things. Like some of the management practices that they use do more harm than good. Like talking about maybe leaving big sheep's head. I don't have any expertise on it. It's not my fish. But like here in Queensland, like they will create a no fishing zone or whatever, and some species like coral trout will grow so big that they eat everything else on the reef. And we have a upper size limit as well. We've got a slot size for that fish, mostly because the bigger ones can have ciguatera. But that we're creating an ecological imbalance because they all, even the juveniles, are their own species, and they just decimate everything, and they will own that bit of reef. And so it's like, I don't know, I like hearing the bigger conversations about why they're choosing particular management strategies and things like that. And it's something I want to get into a little bit more, is probably helping them to disseminate that information, because I think people make better decisions internally when they have the information. Having these simplistic like bag and size limits and rules is great, but like a lot of people just want a little bit more than that. They want to know the why, and if they know the why, then they're going to be able to tell other people, and we're not just relying on these laws to, tell us how to, cook eggs or whatever.
Yeah, and then the other thing is you can apply that logic to other areas, not just that particular zone or reef. So like to a greater, same kind of rules, like, hey, if I go to this reef down here 4 hours from my house and it's loaded, okay, I can take maybe 2.
Yep.
Where at home, I might take only 1. Why? Oh, I noticed this or that. And maybe if I take, but we have the same thing in Florida with Goliath grouper, where they're just massive. They'll eat everything. And, and it's like, it seems like they're chasing their tails, the fisheries, and everything's reactive instead of proactive. And then we create this problem, like, the Garibaldi is the California state fish. Every hole you look in, there's a Garibaldi. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not educated enough on it, but I do know that an overpopulation of one species does have an impact for something.
Yeah.
And it's usually a chain of events, like a chain link that goes all the way up the food chain. So I don't know, but I really hope that we just blindly push the I believe button, that the people making those decisions are taking those things into account. But the sad thing is, when you do meet some of them and you talk to them, you realize, as a diver, more than a lot of people from, now it may not be in the academia world, but we do know a lot. The problem that I have, I'm going to get on my soapbox here in a second. The problem that I have with some people, I say some, is that nothing is valid unless you have time in a classroom. Like, you have no validity. No fisherman knows anything. Nobody knows anything unless they have a fucking Bachelor of Science degree in biology. And you're like, that's not true. Like, that doesn't mean that this person with 40 years experience fishing these areas has nothing to offer.
Oh yeah.
I've seen.
You find the same thing in the terrestrial world. Like, you can talk to someone with a degree in environmental science, and you can talk to a farmer, and then the farmer will know shitloads more than them about every facet of their land, and it's because they've observed it at a ground level. And like a lot of people, and I'm putting farmers in this box, and not all of them, but if you're a smart person, a thoughtful person, and you love your farm, and you want the best for the land and your animals, the crop yields, and all the rest of it, you're going to put a lot of thought into it. And someone that's done 5 years of intensive study, learning how to understand an environment from a particular field of study, that's a great bit of knowledge, but it doesn't diminish the other person's knowledge either. I think sometimes that's why conversation is such a big thing, and having the maturity and humility to be able to just ask other people what they think about things. And sometimes you put those two things together, and it's better. I think fisheries management could benefit from it. Like, citizen science is pretty cool. Like, I would love to see more Spearos involved with it, but a lot of Spearos are so, we're busy for a start, but it'd be cool to see more of us represented on some of these conversations that are had with academics, because our anecdotal bro science, just observing the environment, the natural environment, without streams of bubbles flowing out of us, like we see stuff that they don't, and we can contribute to those conversations and help them make better decisions. So
yeah, definitely. And I think if you can even combine maybe 40 years of being a farmer and have an education, well, that's a very, very squared away person. I've got friends like that. It's like, wow, your crap, And the other thing too is, like, fishermen, guys on the water, top of the water, can fish. Yeah. We bring something just so unique because we're in it, we're diving, we're seeing it, we're watching it. So if we've been fishing for 20 years, or they're going to have their inputs, but we've been in the environment for 20 years. And it depends on frequency and all that stuff. But we've seen it firsthand as well. And we've seen size limits. We've seen the impact certain rules will have. You can go to these no take zones and just see the massive size of these fish in there. And it's cool. My issue was that they have these closures, but what are the plans to open them back up? And how are you going to cycle it? Like, what is the overall long-term plan, because I do care about the animals, I do love them. I mean, if you opened up some of these zones, that 5 years or 10 years of work would be decimated in a day, because you'd have this fish that has no clue, generations of, people snorkeling, look at him, swim right up to somebody. Only today, he gets shot in the face. It's not really like sporting or fair. And then, I could see the post now where he's got their giant fish. It's like, yeah, like, so
I like that management practice you're talking about, like cyclical closures. Like in the Great Barrier Marine Park, they are starting to do that. Where they'll shut a reef down for 2 years, and then but they rotate their closure. And I actually think it's pretty cool, because it gives coral, particularly your hard corals, chance to recover from anchoring. I love seeing fixed moorings in some of these places, but like it can be weird. Like you're 90 miles off the.
We just stop right there. Okay, the metric system makes more sense once you learn it. It really does. Yeah. And the rest of the world. We as the US need to get our shit together and get on the same page. But I swear, it's literally us just saying, no, we're different. We're better.
I reckon we should compromise, because like we spell globalize with an S. Like, I'm sorry, it's a Z sound at the end there. Let's just, we should all compromise and get past some stupidity. But, like you're 90 miles off the coast, and you can see a fixed mooring, and you think, well, that's an artificial construct in what is beautiful nature. But that artificial construct can save, 25 boats a year from, throwing an anchor out and dragging it through the reef as it sets, and unsetting and all the rest of it, and the chain and all the rest of it. I'm not saying, hey, anchoring's all bad, but like if we do care, then these are the sorts of things we should think about. The other thing that people, we can have a real positive impact on the environment too. Like in the southeast Queensland here, we've got hundreds of kilometres of just sand. And don't get me wrong, there is ecosystems love sand and current, and we have different microcosms because of that. But whenever you have structure, you have life. And in different parts, like in Florida, they've got a fantastic artificial reef program that I'm envious of, because they have these patches of nothing, and then you put artificial material in there, whether it's old shipwrecks or, like I was looking at the other day, there was this job site with like 50 old cement mixers, like the truck cement mixers. I was thinking that would make really cool artificial reef. You chain those things together, you get a couple of 100 meters of that, a couple of 100 yards of that, and then you could really like grow a full ecosystem from that. And so humanity, we can be of benefit to the environment, and we sometimes all these things need is a bit of structure to thrive. Sometimes I always think fishers are looked like recreational fishing, whether you're under or below. It's like we're looked at a little bit disdainfully, and I think sometimes we can be a part of the proactive conversations where we look after stuff. But yeah,
I think the biggest thing is like, I think whoever we are all need to sit down and say, we all want the same thing. Like,
fish for generations.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we have a different agenda, because and we talked about it ages ago when we were talking about Seaspiracy and stuff, but like, I love to see people immersed in their environment, because it's just, that is how you have an appreciation for something, and you truly start to understand it. Just like I think like when you learn to kill stuff, you appreciate food more, because you realize there's a cost to it. Just because you buy something in a packet doesn't mean there isn't a cost to it. And I think spearfishing's cool like that, because it just you reconnect in such a dramatic way to your natural environment. You can't help but develop an appreciation for it, unless you're like, you like your
sociopath or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're kind of like your humanity's been cauterized in some way.
Yeah,
maybe you went through the New Zealand school system.
Yeah, no, it's even as a byproduct, like my kids, right? They see it. Like I just did that one post where I bring home lobster. Everybody loves lobster. Not really in my house. It's funny. They're like kind of over it, but they see that it was a living creature, and I bring it home and it's twitching, and it's like, hey, they're gonna go night night right now. They're gonna go, and you know, and it's like, but that has meaning, like that there is something connected to that. Yeah, and I know that my youngest asked me about getting the hunting, terrestrial hunting, or sorry, my oldest daughter, and I was like, okay. I was like, could you shoot a deer? She's like, no, I don't think so, Dad. I'm going to start with birds, Dad. I'm going to start with the turkey.
Yeah.
I go, okay. You know, it's just something to think about. And then I go, you're going to be good. We got to kill it. We got to hunt it, kill it. And now we got to butcher it, basically, or, you know. I don't know crap about terrestrial hunting other than like my buddies would go out and shoot rabbits on the farm. Like, that's, you know, so to me, it's learning a new thing and it's great. We could do it together. And I was like super happy as a dad that she's like, I want to go hunt something. Okay, cool. We can do that together. So, cause up until then, her whole thing's basketball. And then, so it's like, finally you're extending an olive branch to come into my world. Okay. I'll,
oh, that's cool.
So it's cool. But I really hope that, you know, it's funny because the kids like love animals just like I do. And the fact that they can associate the taking of an animal and then food, all the more reason, like, it's working, I guess I would say, like the fact that kill an animal, bring home food, we eat it, everybody's happy. I think that will help.
I'd suggest you guys go and do a bow hunting course or something. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the plan, actually.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, because basically spearfishing is underwater archery, essentially. So yeah. Yeah,
you'll have a lot of skills, but like I'm about to run a spearfishing course over here, and I've actually got 4 bow hunters coming on it. So I'm kind of doing the reverse of what you're doing. And some of them run courses too. And I was like, well, if when I get some time and opportunity again, it's something I'm going to do. I'm a bit like you. Like I've been hunting like with a rifle, but I've never done it with a bow. And I understand there's a fair bit of mastery just in learning how to be accurate with, you know, the different stances that hunting requires. And so that'll be a cool adventure for you, Brett.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Well, let's get into that because you had mentioned your course. So Noob Spearo is not just a podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Noob Spearo is what all the projects do you have? Because every time I turn around, one thing you said, and I do remember this, is you're like, I'm trying to build a community, which I loved. I just respected it. And every time it was like you're at Adreno doing a talk or catch and cook with like another spearfishing celebrity or whoever it is, like in our community, I say as a global community, what all the projects do you have going on? And then we'll get it and one of them is your course.
Yeah. This year, the focus has been really getting these courses like, wrapped up and running really well. And when you start a new project, like there's always like this massive, like you have this huge bump of excitement at the start, and then the cost becomes more and more evident as you go, and the obstacles accumulate, and then it feels like you're 9 rounds into a boxing fight, and it's still unclear as to who's going to win. The courses feel a little bit like that. Like the people that are coming on these courses are just such an incredibly frothy bunch of people. Like there's something about people that are smart enough to invest money in learning and want to do it with someone that they can see that they're going to get some value from. So these people come along. Often I'll have 8 on the beginning courses, and we dive this artificial rock wall. It runs for about 1 kilometer, and then we've got access to like 65, 70 feet off this rock wall. And there's a whole bunch of different structure along it. Sometimes we'll only have like 10 feet of visibility, so it can be crap. But then other times we'll have 45 feet of visibility, so it can be pretty amazing, you know. And it's current affected, so we kind of dive it at the slack tides. But I'll have an average course. We'll have like 8 students, and then we'll have either two instructors and an assistant generally. And I do a PADI freediving course for the first sort of day and a half, and then so that involves all of the theory, learning how to do a rescue. So we work on some of the micro skills, duck diving, equalizing, fitting technique, and then we when we have that sort of foundation of understanding how to do that side of it, then we introduce a spear gun. And we do it with like on dry land. So like I literally put like a croc out on a lawn, and they, you know, have a spear gun. We don't load the bands, but we pretty much walk out holding our breath. And this idea came from a student. Shout out to Linton. And then we simulate holding our breath, walking out, and then we get close to the croc. The student pulls the trigger. Their buddy runs the shaft out and puts it into the croc. And then they simulate swimming back to the surface, doing their recovery breaths, and then pulling that spear gun in, taking braining the croc, simulate braining it. So we teach them Mickey, and then bleeding it, and then taking it off, and then reloading their spear gun, and then priming, watching their buddy do the same thing. And you know, you think the way you started with the spear gun was you probably just got thrown one and you figure out the shooting line path and all the other drama in the water. It's a mess, and it's a comedy of errors. And so, like, if you're experienced and you watch someone do this activity on dry land, you're like, man, that's ridiculous. But, like, it just helps people make all these mental connections, and you're forging all these neural pathways. By the time these people get in the water, it's actually far easier to load a spear gun in the water because you've just got the benefit of everything sort of hanging down below you. And anyway, so that's kind of what we do. And then I set up targets, and we do some target shooting. You know, these guys actually learn how to shoot a spear gun in a controlled environment, semi-controlled, and which is something that none of us ever did. We just started blindly firing at fish. And so with all that information, then we send them off in buddy pairs, with one spear gun, one rig line, and one float sort of between them. And they have turns, and we come along and offer further tuition as we go. But I am actually having some dramas at the moment with the Marine Parks Authority. The wall I'm doing it on, funnily enough, is part of the Moreton Bay Marine Park. So after I'd run about 4 or 5 courses, this ranger hit me up, a compliance officer, and said, "Do you have a permit for what you're doing?" And he was polite, and we had a good conversation over the phone. I was like, "Oh, no, I don't. I've got everything else. I've got all the insurance and all the rest of it." And anyway, he says, "Oh, well, you're going to have to apply for a permit." I applied for the permit, and then you know, it says 45 business days to approval. Meanwhile, I've got like 2 or 3 courses booked in, and you know, it's like $3,000-$4,000 if you pull out, because it's hard to cancel these things. So I'm sort of in this ongoing battle at the moment, waiting for this permit to come through or not. And so I'm sort of having to adjust my courses so that I'm not breaking the law. So this is what I say, like 9 rounds into a 12-round boxing fight, and it's uncertain whether I'm going to win. I can't say the courses are like highly profitable yet. They are highly popular and filling them up. A lot of people are having great experiences. I'm getting heaps of reviews on Google, and all these other good things are happening. I've got a great team of instructors that I have come with me. Shout out to Bree and Tom Sandstrom. You know, these guys are just so cool to teach with, and people are loving it. We rent a big house together on this island and do this thing, but as usual, the government likes to get in the way and try and ruin a good thing.
Did you, you're a freedive instructor too, as well, right?
Yeah. That's, yep.
I think I remember watching you on your on Instagram or something, going through that or sharing some stuff from that. Yeah, it's interesting because I thought about doing all of that, and I'm like, well, I'm not really good enough to be a freedive instructor, like, you know, but you kind of realize it's more knowledge based, I guess, than performance based. But
like the performance requirements for a PADI freediving instructor are not even very rigorous, to be honest. The beauty, I'm not saying, hey, PADI's a great organization or anything like that. I think all the organizations are kind of, I agree with like Ted Hardy, like they're all much of a muchness. It's very instructor centric. You know, if the person in front of you loves what they do and they're good at it, then you can have a good time regardless of what agency they're through. One thing I like about the PADI requirements, so for a freediving course, is like it's 10 meters, 30 feet. You've got to do that by fins and then 1 free immersion dive. You do 25 meters dynamic swim in a like swimming pool or swimming pool-like environment. And I think it's like 1:30 static or something like that. Like these requirements are not very difficult. And for me, like That's what I want for my students on their first ever course. Like, I don't want to put these barriers to entry in front of them. I want them to be able to pass. As long as they can equalize, generally all of them are able to do it pretty easily. But like, I'm not trying to teach these guys to be freedivers either. They're getting a freediving certificate at the first level. I'm not teaching them highly nuanced freediving technique. I'm just giving them the baseline skills in order to be able to go and spear. I personally think that that's all you need. As long as you know how to rescue your mate, follow a buddy protocol, understand the basic physiology, how not to hyperventilate. Like these things are, I think they're just baseline for all Spearos. And I would disagree with you, Brett. Like, I've seen you dive, man. You'd do the instructor's course like there's nothing. It's most freediving courses, like at the higher end, are run in extremely controlled environments. It's quite amazing when you leave the spear gun at home how deep and long you can dive if you really want to, you know?
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, you surprise yourself too. But you also surprise yourself how easy it is, where when you're dropping down without a gun, you're like, all I gotta do is swim. I got both hands I can use. This is easy. Yeah.
I don't normally tell stories about depths and stuff because I think it's counterproductive, and it can be, again, a bit of part of their ego thing. But when I was younger, and I was doing my scuba diving instructors, we spent a month in the kingdom of Tonga on the outer islands called Vava'u, and it's an archipelago, like all these tiny islands. But we were diving these fringing reefs on these islands, and then it just drops off into the abyss. And I remember seeing dogtooth tuna then, and no spear gun in sight, obviously. But I would just snorkel, and like I found like I had pretty decent ability. Like, I met these two scuba divers in the back of a cave in 70 feet, and I'd had no formal freediving training at that stage. And later in the trip too, like I grabbed hold of my mate's gauge off his BCD, and we were at 100 feet, and I was not stressed at all. And like, that was just that was, again, without any real training. It was just spending so much time in the water though that, like, you just start to do stuff, and your body starts to make these connections for you. And like, I loved it, man. I honestly, like, I love it. I feel really at home in the water. Like, and if I get extended time in there, like, I don't know, I think I'm a better person.
Yeah, no,
I'm just nice.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing too, I think what I've noticed is people with a competitive swimming background, they immediately have, like, I don't know if it's the CO2 like tolerance.
Yeah.
They can just hold their breath like forever. Like guys that played water polo or guys that were swimmers, just incredible. I want to say by virtue of just comfort, but like, honestly, more than comfort, because there's a lot of us that spend time in the water. We're comfortable in the water, but for some reason, their ability to hold their breath is just, they're just used to it. Their bodies are used to it. It's kind of cool to see.
I'm a little bit anemic too, so like I'll have low iron sometimes, and my red blood cells volume, I have issues with that, which is like a massive disadvantage when you're trying to hold your breath. And I don't actually understand fully how to do it. I haven't had enough blood work done with controlled studies and stuff, but I know that when I'm training, even training in a swimming pool, I have this huge physiological benefit that translates to all different parts of my life. Because I can go out and like, my breath hold will be absolutely pathetic, and I'll be a terrible diver. And then I'll go out other times and everything's awesome. And there's not much difference in terms of lifestyle factors and things like that. It's just, maybe it's stress related, but it's hard some days when you go out and you're just terrible. It's great when you go out other days and you're just awesome. I think you've definitely got to learn to listen to your body. It's just really hard sometimes when you go out and you're diving pathetic and there's good fish around.
That, and then like there's the ego thing, and you're like, dude, like there have been times, and recently, where 35 feet felt like, why am I freaking out? Like, what is going on? And then it's like, the harder you try, the worse it gets, because you're just so competitive anyways. And but then it's weird. But then by the time, I think a lot of it is the flexibility, the stiffness, depends on how I'm diving, whatever it is. But like you said, everybody's different, but I agree with you. I also try not to pay attention to the numbers. I feel like in our community too, there's, especially with newer guys trying to figure out how deep they go, there's so much emphasis on numbers, and it's not, I think in the long run, it hurts you more than helps you focusing on the numbers, especially as a spear fisherman, because I go, look, I'm trying to do the minimal I can to get the most fish. If I got to dive to 100 feet to shoot fish this big, which I have before, like had to dive deep to get small fish, I might be doing something wrong. I don't know. Like I just, but then when you go and officially free dive train, it's great to push yourself safely.
Yeah.
That's the place to do it. Maybe not when I'm, on a reef with my buddy and I and his bad viz and we can't see each other. But yeah, guilty of that too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Still guilty of that.
Oh yeah.
I know all the stories. I heard them all. And I'm still the guy. I was actually going to avoid talking about it, but I'm still the guy that sometimes likes to go out by myself.
Yeah, my wife gets real mad at me too about it, and I always say the same thing. It's real shallow. It's snorkeling with a spear gun, babe.
I'm bad for a break. Like I preach safety to everyone, and when I'm in the water with other people, I genuinely try to be a good buddy. Like I fiercely try and just do like the Ted Hardy, I call it the bulletproof buddy protocol. Like, we borrow it from scuba diving, like we jump over, cool, you're the leader, I'm going to follow you. When your dive's finished, then I'm the leader and you're going to follow me. And it works. It does work. But it doesn't work if you've got an unwilling partner. And some days, I'll give you a scenario here where I get really pissed off. You go out with a guy, right? And you are a real good buddy for the person. You watch them and stuff. But whenever you turn around back to the surface, they're never there. And then at the end of the day, they're like, man, you didn't even shoot much fish. And it's like, dickhead, I spent half my day chasing after you, looking after you. I wasn't worried about fishing. There's other days, though, sometimes where I just go out by myself and I don't worry about anything and I just focus on what I'm doing and I have an absolute blast, man.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know. You never want to say you're old enough that your risk, your knowledge of risk and understanding of yourself is good, because I don't think it is. But you do just try and be conservative and I think you make that conscious decision, like, oh, hey, I have deliberately watered my only safety device, which is my buddy, in order to go and do this thing by myself. As long as you take that responsibility on, then
yeah, and the free dive recovery vests that are out there, that's something that it's funny. I can get a pretty good deal on them, and I have not bitten the bullet on it, and it's foolish, and I should. And then we were just talking about every day is different, right? And then we justify it when we go dive. We're like, I'll just be conservative today. It's like, even in 30 feet of water, I'll do it, but then it's like, yeah, my wife felt, I'm only going 30 feet of water. I'm like, and then I tell myself, I can stay down there for like 2 minutes. But it's like, yeah, but you're still doing like a 3 minute, or whatever it is, 2.5 minute breath hold or whatever. Yeah. But again, I think it's good to talk about it and show the vulnerability of it. Is kind of what I think like both of us will always try to be vulnerable and be honest. We're not perfect. Definitely try to stick with those rules. A good friend of mine, Peter, messaged me. He won the spearfishing competition. Peter, I got to talk to you about his story. Was so good. He sent me a thing. Hey, I don't know if I should say this, but he won the spearfishing competition, but he also knocked his fucking front teeth out upside down, firing at a yellowtail kingfish, and boom, knocked his teeth out, but he won the competition with his fish. And he's like, I don't know if I should tell this story because I feel like an idiot. I was like, no, fuck it, dude, share it. Because it's happened to me. I just didn't get my teeth knocked out, but I split my chin open at 40 something feet, and I also realized after the fact when I fired another time and a fish that was so close, it hit me in the snorkel, but it was like a mouthpiece. So I didn't knock my teeth out, but, cause I was literally like 5 feet of water. I go, every one of us has done it. Like, and if you haven't, then okay, cool, fine. Your day will come. But like, who cares, dude? Just show the vulnerability. The funny is like, it's the world's most expensive fish because my fucking teeth First, he was in pain, and he's like, and then it cost me so much money to get my teeth fixed. But I was like, hey, you know what, dude? You got the W. Who gives a shit? You won. Who gives a shit? You got the W, bro. You know?
I think that's, someone said it like ages ago. It's like, oh, I'm going out to shoot the world's most expensive fish. You know, spearfishing, like, it's not really as cheap as we make out. Like, I think, you know, the amount we spend on gear and the time and the effort, like, when you put it all together, it's not a cheap way to fish. It's just a really fun way.
Yeah. My mother-in-law loves to give me shit about it. Like, what's the price of tuna now, Brett? $1,200 a pound? Yeah.
She sounds like a tag. That's good.
Yeah.
I think another common one guys do, the recoil from the gun hitting you in the face. That's a common one. Another one is like getting hung up on a cleat on the boat when you fall off the back of it. And the amount of dudes I've talked to where they're like, you know, the what do you call it? The beaver tails caught on the cleat of a boat as they've rolled over backwards, and they're just stuck there like drowning. You know, like, it's just so common, man. These are like real. They sound real dumb, but it's just, I don't know. Heaps of people done them.
Yeah, my buddy, I watched him tear his suit, just a massive gash in his suit on the cleat, getting in and out of the boat. You know, that was brutal because, you know, that's expensive. But yeah, I've knocked myself out getting off a boat onto the dock, stepping, and my sandal got caught in the cleat, and I was like, oh no, and I could see it, and I just landed. I was at work, and it was a closed, I don't know, it was just bad, but I hit like a fucking sack of potatoes, boom, and I was sitting there. One of my coworkers, a friend of mine's like, Brett, you okay, buddy? You okay? And I was like, what a stupid way. Like, of all the shit you've been through, I almost drowned in like 5 feet of water in a dolphin pen one time because I got hung up. Like, something on my gear got hung up or something, and I was like, oh, I'll just get out of it and I'll go to the surface. And then I took off my BC because it was tangled on behind. I was like, I'll just go to the surface. But then my fin got stuck in the net, so I couldn't even go to the surface. Now I'm like grabbing I had a hand on my oar, but I was just getting ready to dump it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm going to drown in 3 feet of water, like 3 feet from the surface. After everything I've been through with like big wave surfing and all this stuff, I want to drown in fucking 3 feet of water. My buddy was like, that's like Superman getting a hangnail. That's ridiculous. I was like, that's how I felt underwater, just pissed. Yeah, but it's...
Mate, I used to lose stuff like, getting hung up with a BCD. Like, when we were chasing lobsters, I remember, like, one of the guys came up with this idea. You know, you got tight caves and you try to get in the back for lobster, and you're on scuba. A lot of people frown. Like, this is just the way I learned. Like, we're in 70 feet of water and current, 10 feet of visibility. But so we would take our BCDs off and like grab your Octi, because I think it had the longest hose on it. And then you would just smash yourself into the caves, into the back of it, so you could try and reach these lobster. And your BCD's just kind of hanging there. Some of the hectic stuff like that, I just look back on it and I go, holy moly, how am I still...
Yeah, we did.
How am I still alive?
We did some shit like that where there was a pipe, and it wasn't...
Yeah.
It was big enough to where you could swim through, just like if you were freediving, but with your gear on. This is at work diving. You couldn't swim through it. So you take your stuff off and you push your stuff through, and you would swim through, and then your buddy's on the other end with a big net, just catching like everything that comes out. I mean, completely, this is years ago. I don't recommend it. May or may not have done this, but it was just a fucking buffoonery. You're like, so much shit could go wrong. Like, because it was like a good 30 feet pipe, you know? You can hear my dog in the background. It's like a 30-foot pipe, and it's just raining shit out the other end that's coming out, because you shine a light in there. You just see antenna, you see stingrays, all kinds of shit's hitting you, and you're like, like
eels.
Yeah, 20. I'm like 20, 4 years old, just like swimming blindly through, closing my eyes, pushing all your shit through, and not knowing, like, dude, if you lost your reg, like, it's so dark, I couldn't find shit. Like, you'd be so, just stupid.
Then it silts out too. It's not like you can get backwards.
Oh no, you can't. Like, you'd have to crawl back, and I'm not touching the bottom because I don't know what's back there.
Yeah, claustrophobia is a thing, eh? Like, I didn't realize that a lot of people do not like scuba diving or freediving because they're actually claustrophobic. They feel like they're shut in by being underwater, and it's just like, but being underwater and then being in a cave, like, I still get the tingles when like you'll suss a cave from the surface, and like when you're spearfishing, and like caves can be such a rewarding places for fish. And I'm still like this guy that goes down and I'll scout the thing like 2 or 3 times before I try and do a swim through or something. And but you find that by then you've spooked the fish. But I'm still not brave enough to just go down there and do it all in one go most of the time, And but yeah, oh man, I'm glad I'm a bit older and wiser now. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. Funny one.
I'm a chicken shit with caves. I realize that in Guam, they're really cool to swim through, and even though you're in the thing for like 30 seconds, maybe, it's such a scary thing because it's like I could be trapped. It's a psychological thing.
Yeah,
but yeah, I would definitely have my friends all go through it. They're going through like, oh, okay, I'm okay, and I might have the longest breath hold out of everybody, and I'm still like heart's beating a little bit faster,
Yeah, it's hard to calm out too. And I think that's your body's instincts. It's also part of the fun of spearfishing. It's that encountering risk and then managing it, managing yourself, and then doing stuff. Like, it's rewarding. It's cool.
Yeah, so what's next for you? Like, what are your goals and projects that you got looking forward to the next year or two?
You inspired me with your video course. I was at the same time I was actually pondering doing a video course myself. And that project's kind of like, I think I've got 1,000 gig of footage sitting there. I started storyboarding out and doing all the stuff. And to be honest, it's been sitting there for about 18 months, just sitting there. I've really tried to prioritize just these courses this year and getting them really running well. And then I'm actually thinking about bringing on more people and opening up more locations because we've kind of got this cool methodology now, the way we sort of teach people the strategic approach. I think I've probably got enough there to start getting other instructors in and then sending them back to wherever they are and they can run their own, I was thinking about doing that. I'm not sure. The problem is like, it's hard to make a lot of money out of it, and I've got 4 boys and a full-time job, like I would love to go full-time with Noob Spearo, but it's just, how do you do it? Is kind of the question. Sometimes, I've always made the choice of just prioritizing impact. And these days I kind of have to be a bit more mature and prioritize income as well, because it's just such a big slice out of your time, man. And like you say, like I've got a wife too. And this is my second marriage. I don't want a third. I'm really trying to do this thing right, and I'm trying to look after my boys and be a decent dad. So at some point you do have to start prioritizing like, okay, I'm going to make some income here. And so that determines a lot. At the moment, like say, these courses, bit of mastery, we're getting these courses really going well. I finished 99 spare recipes like a year ago. The courses have been a priority. To be honest, it's probably going to be something outside of spearfishing for the next little project. But we'll see how we go.
Yeah, it's funny. That sounds really familiar to what a friend of mine, John, is doing the same thing. He finally buckled down and got a full-time job, just because he's expecting his second child on the way. And I told him, I go, hey, welcome to the club. Like, this is the dad's club right here. This is what we're doing. The spearfishing thing is a fun hobby, definitely. But I think the thing was too is like, I think with the courses we were talking about is trying to figure out a way to make some passive income and still help people and still make a difference, just more passive. And I definitely, now that I did the course the first time, and that's like part 1, I guess, is just, I just wanted to get something out there to see, just to start something and finish it, right? Then actually going through it just recently, going back through it, and I'm like, good God, dude, 5 hours of listening to this. And I'm like, I'm mumbling, I'm rambling, like you're just shredding yourself, rightfully so. And you're like, this could be so much better if you had like some anime, you did this, if you did that.
Yeah.
All of that though equals time, and it's tough when it's just you. Like if you could pay someone, but then paying someone requires income, and that's investment into something that is a hobby that may not, it's tough.
It becomes something called opportunity costs. It's like, I got 10 hours spare. What's going to give me my best yield for 10 hours? I can make a spearfishing video course. It's going to take me a month, full-time, 250 hours to do this video course. Plus it's going to cost me $5,000. Then I'm going to be able to sell this course for $150 a pop. I'm going to sell maybe 100 a year. All right, sweet. How about I just make a video course on how to make a podcast, and I charge people $500 for the course, and it takes me 10% of the amount of time, and I can make way more money and arguably more impact too. I always think what we do is just such a labor of love, man. And people go, oh, $150 for a video course or whatever, what a ripoff. And then it's like, you got the people are just unfortunately unable to understand what the value they've been given sometimes in our spearing world. I think a lot of us are just, the hunting mindset that we have also works economically. We're always hunting for a bargain. Spearfishing gear compared to hunting gear is so much cheaper because we're all just absolute tight asses.
100%.
And it's great, but I don't fault people. I'm a bit like that myself. Like, I started with an extreme budget when I started spearfishing. And, my courses, like the beginner courses, started at $1,100, and I'm really having problems putting it up to $1,199 because that's probably where I might start making some money. But it's just, would I have paid $1,199 to go and do a beginner spearfishing course when I was starting? I probably wouldn't have, because I didn't have access to that amount of money. But if I did it now, like we're in our 40s, it is the sort of thing like you're talking about doing a bow hunting course with your daughter. I think it's the smartest way to do it. But if you don't have access to that money, or you're prioritizing it for something else, these are the choices you make,
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree, man. It's you're trying to put out a product that the masses can use. But the masses, but then that just equals to do that, you have to lower the cost. And I mean, you're not going to make any money. It's tough. And I do think that you're talking about now the podcast thing, on the other hand, Mike, because I've had so many people like, how do I start a podcast? And there's something, some statistic about the number of podcasts out there is insane. And, and how did we do it? Well, we just fucked our way through it. Like, I made every, until I just had Brian from Uncle Learn You How, hey, about the podcast. He wanted to start one for his brand, just kind of, and I was like, well, what approach are you looking at doing? What do you want? Video? Do you want this? Do you want that? How much money do you want to spend? Because here's a breakdown of where I'm at now, and I could go up way more. But I could also go down way more too with a simple USB mic and Zoom, or Skype or something.
Yep.
And then, how do you want to edit it? How do you want to post it? How do you want to share it?
Yeah.
But there's so much value, I think, in that to more people than it would be to the 3 people that spearfish, It's like,
Yeah. I don't know. I look at video courses too. Like, the other thing too, like, when I went to create the video course, I went through your video course as well, and I was like, sweet, he's got something done here. Credit to you. Like, just getting something done and out there is cool. It's a great way. You've at least proven, sweet, I can do it. And then after that, you can refine it and improve it. I always respect people that just have a go. And, there's that old analogy in entrepreneurship. It's like, ship it before it's ready.
Right.
I think you need feedback in order to improve it anyway. And I think podcasting is the same. A lot of people get crippled by, it's not going to be good enough. And it's just like, shit, you just got to get something out there and learn. And I encourage people like that all the time. Like, otherwise I'd still be stuck in that plasterboard factory, probably doing the stuff I was doing. Like, I come a long way since then. I'm not where I want to be, but like, it's cool.
I don't know if we'll ever be where we want to be, just because we have that mindset of trying to always get 1 degree better, 1% better, to get better every day. So it's like, it's more of the journey than the, than the destination.
I enjoy, and one of the things that keeps me going, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is that the emails, the personal messages you get where you've made a difference to someone, you know. I've had a few over the years, and they have kept me going in some of the most discouraging parts. And you know, to know that you personally maybe help someone save a life, or you know, there's the one guy listened to our podcast on Ciguatera. He was careful with the fish and only poisoned himself instead of his whole family because of listening to an episode. And you know, I don't know, stuff like that. It sticks with you.
Yeah, when I had thought, I think it was about 6 months ago, I was like, I think Shrek's got it. I'm just gonna get out of this and focus on, you know, whatever it was, right? And it's funny. I don't know if anybody's religious or anything like that. I kind of am, even though I swear like a sailor. But
Me too. No, I am.
yeah,
I'm a Christian. You wouldn't know it. Yeah,
that's what I would say too. I know you guys don't know, but I'm actually like
Yeah.
Christian.
Yeah.
You know, right when I was getting ready to get out, I got like 3 messages on Instagram, and it was like, "Hey, I just listened to this episode, loved it, thank you for whatever." And I was like, "Okay, maybe God give me a nudge. Just keep your head down, just keep working. It's being appreciative." And that's really all I care about, is that you're putting something out there that someone can use. If nobody can use it,
Yeah, man.
nobody needs it, then that's fine. I don't need that to sleep at night. But if people are finding a value, I'll just keep doing it. It's good.
Yeah. You've had some rad chats. Those 2 guys down in Baja that are organising that comp, even though English wasn't their first language, I thought that was a pretty cool chat. And that's what I mean about, sometimes you're just helping other people, you know? Like,
Right.
you're helping your listeners connect with it, but you're also helping those guys grow their thing. I reckon that's cool. It's a privilege to be able to do that. And you go back down there, so you've got a couple of friends, and you've straight away got a bit of a network. It's cool.
Yeah, I did their tournament like the following weekend or 2 weekends or whatever it was. And it was a fucking absolute blast. And you know, ended up diving in a new area with those guys and just had a ton of fun. And they were so appreciative because they're like, we really need more more U.S. money to come here, even though they're literally like 45 minutes away. U.S. money to come over here to help. So they appreciated, I guess, me and getting the message out, and the other guys too. And it was definitely like a win-win for everybody. And I appreciated I don't really drink a whole lot, but I appreciated the 2 beers that I had, and the fish tacos was delicious. So a lot of fun. Well,
how's your seafood cooking game these days?
yeah. So it's gotten slightly better. I would say slightly better, because I'm always like, if it ain't broke, why fix it? But you always try to, you know, so the grouper thing, trying to figure out 10 different ways to do that. Even lobster this year, I was trying to figure out another way to, I never really boil it or bake it. I always just
Barrage lobster. You've got to do it.
Yes. Okay. Cool. We'll talk about that. Because I was like mac and cheese lobster. I'm like, I've never had that. It sounds gross. But I ended up having it somewhere, and I'm like, okay, let me try this to keep the kids interested, and you know, So that's that, and the dry aging stuff, man, really is another fucking. I mean, that just tastes delicious. Dry aging is really the way to go. The problem is I just don't have the space. Like, like
I just do the poor man's one, and you've probably heard me talk about it.
No, which one is that?
Oh man, there's a fish over here called a swordtail surgeonfish. They're like absolutely prolific, super easy to spear. So like super easy. They don't catch them on the line commonly because they're like weed eater. Those real scales, and they're this leathery textured fish with almost like these spines in the tail, which is why we call it a swordtail. But shoot them in the face, get them home, knock the fillets off, leave the skin on if you want, or cut it off, doesn't matter. Like paper towel it dry, introduce 0 fresh water, and then wrap these things in paper towel, put them in a Ziploc bag and throw it in your fridge for a day. Pull it out, wrap it again in fresh paper towel and throw it back into the fridge for another day or 2, and then pull it out and there's your dry aged fish. Super easy. And then and cut that up, put it for a ceviche or as sashimi or whatever. Some of the best fish you'll eat in your life.
Isn't it amazing though, some of the fish that's looked at or snubbed is like the best.
Yeah.
It tastes awesome. We get that.
I turned down a Spanish mackerel the other day to shoot a unicorn leather jacket, just because I love the unicorn leather jackets, man. And I did a whole bake on that thing, because you can literally grab the fish by the spine and then just tear its head off, and then it's just all good meat.
Yeah.
And I don't skin it or anything, just give it a quick wipe, and put it in some tinfoil, add a couple of bits and pieces to it, and throw it in the oven, and that is just falls off the bone, so good.
That's the same with coral trout that I've had. My son was like, "That's the best fish I've ever eaten." I'm like, "That's why people tag them." Yeah, just the whole fish, the island style. Cut it, throw some mayonnaise on it or whatever, and put it in tinfoil. And
Yep.
yeah, yeah, we do that with people like snub opali or burrito grunts here, just like regular reef fish that just eat, weed and all that stuff. And man, I'll tell you what, if you know how to cook it and you can throw it on a fish taco, it tastes delicious. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's not all about the photos you're not going to be posting photos on Instagram or look at my massive, like, but who gives it?
Look at my massive.
Yeah. Look at this, fish of a lifetime. Like, okay, cool, but it tastes delicious. And I think it's important to remember that. My son reminded me that I told the story before on our little spearfishing trip before he went to college, and he just started blasting these burrito grunts once we ate one the first day. He's like, that's what the fish I shot. I'm like, yeah, it's the fish you shot. It's burrito grunt. He's like, tastes delicious. And then we go out the next day and he's just unloading in the shallows on the things. I was like, okay, dude. And then John and I are trying to dive, deep for a grouper, and he's just in the 5 feet of water, just smoking them. But it reminded me, the whole point is to eat, right? So it's like, how deep can you dive?
Well, it depends. Sometimes you are getting food, and like I've got 4 boys, so my wife's always like, "Oh, we need some fish," So I do go out and I go for meat sometimes.
Right.
But if the freezer's like, if I've got enough fish, or I might do some like food fishing at the start of the day or whatever, and then I segue into like, okay, I want to do something challenging now, and there's a joy in the hunt and the figuring stuff out, and the firsts of a species, but the biggest of a species, even just like having a rad hunt feel real cool. Like, like you time your drop just right. I had this one fish off Brizzy. I've told this story a few times probably, but we're doing this really fast drift, and it comes up out of sort of like 80 feet of water into 30 feet. And, you got to time your drop so you hit the front of the pressure point. That's where everything holds on the front of this reef edge. And I noticed that there were these 3 like tank jobfish, green jobfish there. And but it was like everything had to be right. You had to hop on the right part of the front leading edge, and then you needed structure to hide behind for them to come in. And I must have spent like 8 or 9 drifts trying to time this thing right. And I was one of those days where my breath hold was pathetic. Like I was absolutely struggling my ass off to do a minute, and only in 35, 40 feet of water, like absolutely struggle street. But I managed to time it all right, crept up, and then they came in right at the back end of my minute. And then I've crept forward and put a long shot in, secured this big jobfish, and then screamed off, pulled like a yellowtail, and then buried me under a rock, laid out on the sand. My dive buddy, as usual, is like 40 meters away. He swims over and just in time to see these 3 bull sharks annihilate it and eat it. But the coolest part of it was like I did 9 dives, and I did everything right in order to get that fish. I didn't get the fish, but like the whole process was just so fun, man. Like and those times, those days when things like that happen, so cool, man.
It's adventure.
It just keeps coming back.
Yeah, adventure. Yeah. Like recently too, the same thing. Like my buddy and I went down. There was 3 of us, and we all dropped down this reef, and you're like, oh my God, there's fish everywhere. And so you could be selective and you could be patient. And we both, then like 4 drops shot, I shot two grouper, broomtail, Gulf grouper. He did the same. I'm like, okay, well, we're done. We've been in the water for like literally a half hour, 45 minutes. We're done. And our friend, he was not quite as strong as diver as we were, and it wasn't that deep, but he was like 50 something feet. But you got to really kind of, like you said, you got to hunt. You got to like sit there, wait, just be patient. And he could get down there, but he was like, oh, you could, you know how it is, like when you're even, if I'm at 60, 80 feet or whatever, I'm like, oh, okay. And so our whole second day was coaching Neil up to be able to like shoot a fish, and he was ecstatic as he had talked this place up, and he had met, and it lived up to his expectations. And we were like, oh, wow, I cannot believe this. But we were ecstatic because we were just like, I really enjoy seeing people get that, like making people better and the hunt part. But like you said, like one of my most memorable fish was sitting on a shelf at 60, and I got vortex by dogtooth that were probably like 18 inches. And I shot one.
Oh, wow.
And I never thought, number one, I'd ever shoot a dogtooth tuna just because I live in California. Number two was like sitting there and like real diver, like real having to hunt. And then like in this new area. And it drops to like 100 feet. So you're sitting on a shelf, you could look out and see this massive coral trout, It's like, I'm not from Florida. I can't dive that deep. But I mean, and then the doggies, surround you, just shoot one and then land the shot. That's another thing. They land the shot and you're like coming up, you're like, I'm a real diver, this feels good. Yeah.
Man, those moments, they do happen every now and then. You lay it on the bottom and you have opportunity and you don't have to pull the trigger, but it's like I don't know, it's like those days where you feel like you belong and this is your place. Like that, good days, man. Those moments are friggin' awesome.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that's, like you said, that's the important thing, is that's why we do it. It's just that feeling, being a part of the environment. I guess if like my wife and I were talking about, I mean, because of social media, it looks like every time you go out, you get a fish. When I hunt like white sea bass, I did for years, like I'm doing it for, I don't know, 20, but the amount of time in the water, like I would say you could probably add up, I hunted for years without even seeing one. But the whole point was I literally snorkeled on a coral reef, or I snorkeled on a kelp forest. Like you're talking about, those days where you're like, wow, this is just kind of surreal. And if a fish swims by, cool, but this is really cool. And, bat ray swims by or something, and you just enjoy the environment and to be a small part of it. There's always like something special about that. Even if it's like a hunter going for a walk in the woods and he just happens to be carrying his gun, like it's pretty cool.
It was spoiled, Brett. I want all my boys to have that same feeling, like just an appreciation for what we have access to, like it's a cool thing.
Yeah. And that's just it, and passing it along to others, and like for us as dads, like passing on to my son and my daughters. I'm not saying you got to buy in and go crazy like your old man, but just take it in, because I just know they're going to marry somebody just like me. It's going to be hilarious. It's like, you're ready. Yeah, they'll be all trained up for it. I'm like, oh, I know, my dad's a psychopath too. Like, I know you guys. Yeah, no, it's funny. Well, thanks to Shrek for your time, and thank you for everything you do for this community. Truly selfish, genuine person, and I just love that you're the in a lot of ways the spokesman of our community, and you're doing it right, and it's fucking awesome, man. And thank you for all the help. If I hadn't said this before, like Shrek always was the first one to offer help, and give me, and just be a total open book to getting started, and I really do appreciate that. And that's why I always looked at you as a mentor, not competition or any of that stuff. Just fucking solid dude. And I know how it is, man. It's hard to travel and all of that, but if you ever get a chance to come over, I know the reef we're going to now. We're fucking going. If you come over, so. Yeah.
Mate, but I wanted to do US pre-COVID, like I was going to come over and do, one of the big Florida, is it the Blue?
The one in Florida is that giant, biggest
Expo.
I think Brett Label does host it or some of the biggest spearfishing competition.
Yeah. Oh, not the comp, the expo, like what do you call it, the show, the trade show?
Yeah.
Or there's another one. Yeah. I was going to come over and do one of those, do a heap of interviews, and then also spend some time spearing. But the problem is, it's like, what do I do? Do I do 3 weeks in Florida or 3 weeks in California? And because I would like to do the East and West Coast, like there's so much there, like that Block Island.
It's massive.
Yeah. If you come into Australia, I'm sorry, you just go straight to WA. You don't make any bones about it. You go straight to WA and get on with some decent operators and go. I mean, you're right though. We've got Coral Sea as well up in the north, and the Great Barrier Reef's pretty special as well. So we're a bit spoiled. Even if you wanted to do temperate water stuff, like I was on the phone yesterday with the bloke in South Australia. It's cool diving even down there. So I hear what you're saying, man.
Yeah, big sharks down there. I know surfing in Western Australia looks insane. There's just nobody there, I think. It's just, so the fishery's healthy, and the Northern Islands up in, what starts with an M or something, up there, man, they just have incredible places.
We can't talk about it. We can't blow these spots up.
It's just incredible.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, brother, for your time.
Oh, good, Brett. Keep doing what you're doing, man. It's a cool podcast. Love listening to the Spear Factor, and you've brought something to your spearfishing community, particularly like the guys in your area, but even broadly, but I think I was legit with what I said earlier. Like you're a legit voice, and definitely in your part of the world, and people need that.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't have done it without you, and I mean that sincerely.
Oh, good, brother.
Yeah.
Good.